Hello and welcome to tonight's episode of Myths and Stories, Destiny 2 lore podcast. Tonight we are continuing our never-ending story of the Awoken. Although we're getting close to the end, we promise. We were just saying, as much fun as it is to investigate the Awoken story, we're ready to move on to some new stuff here in another episode or two. So, but last time we left off with kind of an ominous, cryptic message that was on the Telesto lore card, which was a message to Petra telling her that the prince is not to be trusted.
You said the word. You said Telesto.
I did.
We promised we wouldn't say it this episode. Now we have. Okay, now you got to throw the salt over your shoulder and go outside and turn around and spit. All that.
Gotta get a smudge stick and run around the house. Yeah. But
okay. Now you're just being silly.
That's too far. Yes, clearly.
No. But yeah, Mara's back in the picture. She's gotten her body back, or she's recreated her body. Her throne has been shattered. Like you said with Telesto, there's an ominous warning about don't trust the crow.
With that in mind, a lot of the stuff we talk about tonight is going to be very Uldren based. What is Uldren doing post death of Mara? Because he doesn't know the events that happened that we described in the Reverie Dawn sets. He and most of the Awoken at this point assume that Mara is dead and gone, and they're trying to figure out what that means for them. For Uldren, it means a slow spiral into madness, essentially. And we're going to be along for that roller coaster of a ride tonight. But before we get into the Uldren specific things, the first card we're going to read tonight is actually going to be in reference to an Awoken named Ilyn. We've discussed Ilyn a little bit before. Essentially, Ilyn is a Techian. I believe maybe the head Techian at the time.
I think so.
And Ilyn is important because of what they and a number of other Techians attempt post the Taken War. And they we're going to read through this card, and then we've got a couple of theories as to how this may relate to what ends up happening with Uldren. So, without further ado, this is the Ilyn card from the book The Awoken of the Reef, and it goes like this. In the bomb-walled passages of the place called Process and Services, the screams have stopped. I've never heard it quiet before, Lucille whispers. Are they gone? But she knows, as Portia and Nasia know, as Ilyn herself knows, that the Taken have not gone. Not very long ago, Processes and Services was the place Ilyn and her sisters came to make the Desolates, items of technology imbued with the husk-dry power of Oryx's Taken. Ilyn was the first to stand as living conduit, the first of the Techians to use that deep interior fault line, that fundamental Awoken schism, as a bridge. She remembers the endless, awful, infinitely malicious screams of the things. But she also remembers the whispers, and if the screams are silent now, the whispers are louder than ever. Quickly, Ilyn hisses, before Petra is informed. Any breach of Processes and Services triggers an alert, and while they were crafty in their intrusion, even minute body heat and motion of the air will be detected. We must ask our questions and go. Brave Portia leads them to the cell she selected for their use, a vacuum-gaped sphere of relic iron coated inside and out by signal-deadening spinfoil. It hovers in suspension, a black miniature traveler, a pearl formed around a hideous interior flaw. Ilyn opens a needle-thin access port. The stink of ozone rolls out. There is a taken vandal within, flexing and shuddering through nameless permutations of blissful agony. Nasia, she whispers. Quiet, precise, Nasia slips a whisper of cable into the port, guiding it through impossible twists and encrypted locks with the caress of her augment's fields. Ilyn rubs her temples. The whispers are loud here. The whispers that haunt the place where their queen's voice once sounded. Whispers which sound so much like missing Shiro Chi and the others from the queen's flagship. They should have self-gated to the dreaming city if the battle went wrong. They should have come home safe. What if they need help? What if Petra has kept their fate from Ilyn? Would she do that? Petra, Coven's daughter, raised by the witches? Things have not been easy between the Regent Commander and the Techians. Ready. Nasia offers a splayed end of the cable to them. Be careful, all of you. Their augments sink in a stutter of light, like a sunbeam passing over a field of diamonds. Inquisitive Lyselle forms the first question. Do you hear us? The viper-strike rush of the taken thing's will comes at them. It is powerful, but familiar. Ilyn deflects its demand. I think it hears us, she says with a grim chuckle. We know Taken too well, don't we? There were fears once that the Guardians would be appalled by the Taken-empowered armor. But Petra was right. Guardians will wear anything that gives them power, whether tactical or social. Together they unfold the Taken thing's brutally elegant interior geometries, seeking the threads of connection that reach out across space and time. Shiro, Ilyn whispers. We have heard you. Do you hear us? And that is when she makes the fatal mistake. She thinks of the time before Saturn. She thinks of Shiro Chi and Uldren and Mara. She wants that time back. She wants. And in the non-space around them, great jaws snap shut. Riven, brave Portia screams. Ilyn was prepared for Taken, folded, perfect things, elegant and thus manageable. But this absolute appetite, this impossible will. She speaks the secret word of stasis that will crash their augments and end the communion. She does not know if she's in time. Quiet Nasia is screaming. Inquisitive Lysella is screaming. The screaming has begun again. And that's the end of that lore card.
So there's a very important reason why we wanted to include this lore card. And it's a majority of this lore card is just them trying to get a hold of Shiro Chi, of I'm assuming Callie as well, and Mara and everything, because like and we explained this in depth last episode. After the Taken battle at Saturn, I keep calling it the Battle of Saturn. The desecration of the Awoken fleet at Saturn. There was no battle. It was a one-sided blip. The Awoken people are very scattered. They really don't have a clue what the hell's going on. They're trying to piece everything together. Petra kind of gets ushered in as regent, just kind of like, okay, well, screw it. She's commander, now she's regent. Let's go. Okay, we need to keep a chain of command going. Uldren's lost. They don't know what Uldren's up to because he's crashed out in Mars, and Uldren's separated from everyone else, so he thinks everyone else is dead. But there was something in those entries of when he first crashed on Mars that we talked about last episode to kind of keep in your mind, that he had an itch in his eye, a blink in his eye. And he kept trying to blink and get it to leave his eye. And Myth and I were trying to find out where, because the blink in the eye is it's going to come into play tonight, and I don't want to just come right out and say it. But the blink in the eye is a connection between Uldren and an entity that we've talked about before, and is mentioned here. And towards the end of this reading, Illen's trying to get a hold of Shiro through the Taken. Like maybe there can be a connection that can be made through this Taken perfect folded thing with no will and Shiro or whatever. And something happens. She makes a fatal mistake. She thinks of a time before Saturn. She thinks of Shiro Chi, Uldren, and Mara. She wants that time back. In the non-space around him, the Great Jaws snap shut. The Great Jaws being the jaws of Riven. And we know that Riven was taken, presumably by Oryx, or not presumably. I think we said it last episode. She was taken by Oryx. All the Taken that are in the Dreaming City that they had cleared out of this area at least once, and now have captured one and are trying to make a connection with it. All of that was there because of Oryx, because Oryx is the only entity, at least the only entity that I know of, that has used the power to take ever. I can't. Myth, can you think of a just off the top of your head another entity that's ever taken?
I mean, the one that is up for contention that is never any confirmation on would be Quoria
Yep.
via a simulation
Yep.
of Oryx. But that, as far as I know, that is speculation, and there's like circumstantial evidence that points to that, but we never get confirmation that happens.
So, knowing that Riven is taken, like we as players know that now because we've been through, or some of us have been lucky enough to go through the Last Wish raid. And when you get to the end of it, it's Riven's there. Like that's the whole point that you're there, is to kill Riven, and she is taken. And so the fact that she has no will of her own anymore by being taken, she's just going to grant wishes willy-nilly. We also know in the past that Mara specifically forbade Uldren from having any contact with Riven because of how feedable Riven was off of Uldren's wants. And so this was the entry here that Myth and I thought of, and we thought this is the only way that Riven and Uldren could have had some type of connection, because we know that wish magic is, for lack of a better term, fucky. And so for Illen to want, and then for Riven to feed off of that want, now there's a way for that to now there's a desire, now there's a want, now there's a feeding that can happen, and the wish can commence. And so in monkey paw wish magic that Ahamkara magic is, that's where the connection to Uldren starts, and that's the blinking in his eye, the sand in his eye, that he can't blink away while he's roaming around the deserts of Mars.
Yeah. So, and the fact that Illen specifically wanted, and in her want, she named in her head, presumably, Shiro Chi, who is taken at this point and is serving as bodyguard to Riven, kind of within the Last Wish raid, and Mara and Uldren, like those three names specifically, and by nature of connecting them in her mind, in her desire, we're theorizing that she's connecting the wish to one or more of those people in doing this.
And I'm curious too if part of that wish, like her wanting Mara, was that actually an inadvertent helped for Mara, so Mara could reform herself in a physical aspect. Like, did Mara fully, because we asked this question last time, is Mara a god now? Like, has she ascended past awokenness? And is part of this wish, her naming Mara specifically, is that what helps Mara form her body out of more than just will alone?
Maybe. I mean, we won't have a way to know unless Riven were to explicitly say, like, oh yeah, this is how I granted XYZ, which she doesn't, and she won't because she did.
She did.
But it's worth thinking about, like, and that's the thing with Ahamkara wishes. the potential for butterfly effect is so large in some cases, it's hard to know what was touched and what wasn't.
It's literally like Bungie's perfect answer for something when they're just like, well, how do you want to explain this? I don't know. Riven.
Riven.
Ahamkara magic.
Yeah.
Go.
For some vex
Like,
reason, Ahamkara
For some
wish.
I was gonna say, for some X reason it fucking Toland. Also, Ahamkara. There. Now we've explained the entirety of Destiny. Show's over, we go home. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the main reason why we wanted to call this card out here. Like, as far as like what's happening in the card, not super important, but that ending there, that last bit of it, connecting Uldren and Riven. And that's going to be kind of the key thing going through all of the cards that we read tonight.
Yeah. So to give a very brief explanation of what's happening in the rest of the card, essentially these are just Ilan and a few Techians are going kind of under Petra's nose to use this captured Taken as a conduit to try and get out to presumably like the Taken. I don't know that hive mind is the right word, but they're like shared consciousness,
mind, like the consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To try and track down, in this case, Shirochi. And Ilan, because as we've said before, Amara didn't tell anyone all of the plan, or even some of the plan for some people. Ilan apparently did not know what Mara's plan was, and is perplexed as to why the Techians that were with her wouldn't have just like portaled everyone back out to the Dreaming City. What she doesn't know is that they did do that, minus Mara, and the hesitation in leaving Mara behind is what caused the Dreaming City and all of them there to fall to Oryx. But that's all she's doing. She's trying to covertly, through means Petra would not approve of, find information on these missing Techians. But so with that in mind, this connection that's been made with this wish that we're theorizing has been made with this wish, we're going to move on to the next lore card. So while maybe not exactly at the same time, but while Ilan is dealing and the Techians are dealing with finding answers in their way, we also see that Petra now is being forced to play diplomat, which she is not particularly keen on doing, and is not particularly confident in herself in some regards. So we're going to take a look at Petra and some of the things she has been doing post Taken War, specifically with the tower in this case. So this card is Refusal, which is also from the lore book, The Awoken of the Reef. And it goes like this. Petra has her welcome for Zavala all planned out. He will say something stentorian, which, while it is technically a greeting, Petra will also read as reproach or condescension, or perhaps paternal concern. Petra will smirk at Zavala while she really doesn't care, so that he knows he's nobody, a little guy, a bureaucrat far beneath her anger. But at this exact moment, a shard of cyanide-laced ice from far reaches of the Oort cloud will penetrate the reef's ravaged defenses and smash into Zavala with such velocity that he becomes a thin ooze across the floor. When Zavala's ghost begins to rebuild him, Petra will say smoothly, "No, allow me," and she will brandish a mop. The hatch opens, and Cade 6 backs his way through, talking to Zavala. Whatever you've seen, whatever you've read, it's worse. These people need our... Cade. Petra half-consciously adopts Mara's fey remove. Her insouciant and remote posture. Her throat jams up, and she actually coughs aloud against the sudden grief. You brought Zavala grinds his way into the room, an obelisk of city stone extruded across the solar system to invade Petra's space. He very politely answers Cade before turning to her. The fact is, Cade, the Queen did us a favor by leaving the reef in chaos. As long as the Fallen are here killing each other, we have room to rebuild. Now he nods to Petra. Regent Commander, pleased to see you well. Likewise, I'm sure. Petra feels in her heart that the Queen saw the reef as a protector of Earth and its people, if perhaps not a protector of the traveler. It still kills her to hear Zavala speak openly of the reef as a distraction. Cade had a proposal, she says, that he wanted us to both hear. Yes, I did. Cade prances between them like a flare meant to draw off the heat-seeking fury passing between Petra and Zavala. The city's fall drove him deep into his jester persona, devil-may-care and fancy-free. He hasn't quite recovered. It's like this, Petra. We're bringing a lot of Earth's lonely people into the arms of the city. I got to talking to Varix about the situation out here, and I figured, hey, maybe it's time we extend that policy to you. He sobers. I want to invite the Reef Awoken into the city. Abandon this place to Varix, to dead orbit, to whoever wants it. It's hell out here, Petra. You won't survive. Zavala's eyes locked on Petra. He burns with a magnificent power. Does the Regent Commander have enough control over the reef to execute a withdrawal? Despite your best efforts, Petra snaps. And then suddenly she can't stop. She's too furious, too hot with grief. At least Cade is honorable enough to acknowledge what you've done to us. Every fallen house you shatter washes up on our shores. Every hive god and cabal tyrant you attract goes through us to get to you. No wonder she couldn't stand the sight of you, Zavala. You've forsaken your people. She bites back the rest. How she wishes that back in 2000 and whatever, when the darkness hurled mankind off the height of its golden age to plummet 16 centuries into barbarism, it had done just a slightly better job. That's not true. That's her broken heart talking. But oh, does it talk loud. She was a charlatan, Zavala says quietly, fighting a war that existed only in her mind, dragging you all behind her. Any of you who will admit that are welcome in my city, but I will not take in whatever conspiracies she left unfinished. If you come to us, you come to join the city. No. No. Stop being the Queen's people? Stop remembering her promise? You're afraid, Petra tells the Titan of Titans. That's why she could never trust you. Go back to your traveler, Zavala. Thank you for your concern, Cade, but the reef has its own purposes, and you would mourn your foolishness if we abandoned them. Petra. They are the purposes, she snarls, intended by our queen. And that's the end of that lore card.
Petra's a bit of a spicy commander, eh? I do love this because I love that whole entry. Like she's got this whole thing planned out. Like, you know, she obviously since the desecration at Saturn, like the Awoken people are just kind of out here in the reef, just doing whatever they can to survive. And the people of the city know this. Like, and this is kind of like all the way, you know, there's all these like debts that have been happening back and forth, right? Like Mara, when they first brought them back through the distributary, was like, we have a debt to the whatever we left here, to the soul system, whatever. The city thinks, oh well, you know, we kind of have a debt to the Awoken because of their distraction on the reef, of distracting the fallen houses that had to go through them to get to Earth. So yeah, so there's all this like back and forth between the people of the reef and the last city. And so Petra always looks at Zavala as like this super stern, like whatever, who cares? Screw this guy. I don't care if he's the Titan of Titans or whatever. He's nothing compared to what the Queen of the Awoken and now me her thinking of herself, the Regent Commander is of the Awoken. And then all of that just gets kind of flushed down the toilet when she sees Cade kind of like prancing out in his little happy-go-lucky, like, hey, what's up? What's going on, baby? Attitude. Um, so yeah, kind of throws her off her beat, and she doesn't really like. She's having a hard time kind of recovering from that. And then Cade just comes right out and says it. Hey, I I I know that there are people out here that are in need. Like it's gonna be throughout the so many years that the Awoken have been in the reef, they've been losing people. It's been a losing existence. I don't want to call it a losing survival because it's not. It's very much a losing existence out here on the reef. And so they're open arms, like, hey, anybody you got, bring them with. And Zavala kind of like is like, okay, that like yes, but you leave all your dogmas of being awoken and being of the queen and all that stuff here. Like, you don't bring it. If you come to the city, you are city. You're part of the last city. You are of us. We are one people now. We're not going to be of the reef and of the earth and of the city and of the sky, whatever. We're all one people fighting back the darkness. And obviously that kind of like sets Petra off, like, hey, fuck you, Zavala. Like that's pretty much what comes out of Petra's mouth.
Yeah, I think it's worth making an observation here. Zavala, even in recent, even in Witch Queen and whatnot, he's never said we're building up to resist the darkness.
Right.
It's only ever been we are building up to protect the city, the last city of humanity and the people that are in it.
Oh, interesting.
And
I've never thought of it like that.
So I don't think Zavala has these grand ideals of we're going to build up a Guardian Armada and we're going to take it to the Witness. I think the only reason he cares about the Witness is because he knows the Witness intends to wipe them out. If I do wonder if the Witness were coming and told them, or they learned somehow like, hey, I'm going to come to the Soul System. I'm going to completely eradicate the Awoken and then I'm going to leave. And you guys, I'm never going to come back and mess with you guys. I don't know that Zavala would step in to stop that.
That's true.
Not because I'm not trying to paint him as like an evil figure or anything, but from Zavala's point of view, who has lived centuries of warfare and centuries of death, he sees and has Mara and the Reef-born Awoken essentially as a cult. Mara was this figurehead that spun these tales and brainwashed people into following her to fight these wars that in his view are only in her own mind. And
absolutely,
he sees these people as like they're following a cult leader dogma, and they just happen to have power and haven't been aggressive towards us, so we just kind of let them be there and take some hits for us every now and then.
Absolutely.
And now on Petra's side of things, she knows that Mara's whole thing, the Awoken's whole thing, has always been like, we are here to be the ultimate shield between humanity and whatever else is out there. They go about it in a very different way, but that's their end goal. And to have somebody of that group that you are protecting, a leader of that group you are protecting, be so dismissive of all the sacrifices that they have made on their end, and for that leader to be none other than Awoken themselves.
That was going to be a point that I was going to make. Like, Zavala is an Awoken. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of a giant middle finger to Petra. And so for Zavala to throw that middle finger at Petra, and to Petra to be like, well, fuck you, like, that's 100% justifiable on Petra's end.
Yeah. I mean, I can see where both of them are coming from in this conversation.
Sure.
And I don't think they were ever going to come to an agreement, is what it comes down to. Like, it just, they're both very set in what their viewpoint is at this point in time. And I don't think it's ever been a secret, even now in game. Zavala does not hold any love for Mara or her ideas.
Nope.
He recognizes that she has information that he does not in some cases, but he has never really trusted or respected her.
Not at all. Not one bit. He and I like your comparison of Mara to a cult leader, because that's absolutely what Zavala sees her as. Like, just this, who is this random person who's come? Because even though Zavala is awoken, he's a guardian, so he's lost all of his memories of being awoken. So the only thing he has is centuries of fighting, and we know, especially through the most recent seasonal stuff, that Zavala was one of the original, not warlord, risen, not risen. Would he have been I guess what did they call him post Iron Lord?
Like between Iron Lord and Guardian kind of
and
thing.
Guardian, yeah.
I mean, maybe that was when the term Guardian was coined, when they started building the last city.
Maybe.
Perhaps, yeah, I don't know. Perhaps they were unnamed. They were just light bearers or whatever.
Interesting. I guess I've never thought of it till that exact moment, but yeah, like when they first started being raised as with Ghost, they were called Risen, and then came the Warlords, and then that was a whole thing, and then came the Iron Lords out of the Warlords to say, hey, we need to bring order to this place, and then started to kind of evolve into what we know today as Guardians. But yeah, like, yeah, I can definitely see him seeing her as that. And then there's one little bit here, one little sentence long deal. How she wishes that back in 2000 and whatever, when the darkness hurled mankind off the height of its golden age to plummet 16 centuries into barbarism. It gives us a little bit of a time frame of where of how long something lasted. Like, we still have no idea what point in time Destiny takes place. Like, we know from the original marketing stuff, the very first cutscene that was like the cosmonaut, the astronaut, and the techonaut. I think that's what the third one was. On Mars, like, that was supposed to be like 2014. Like,
yeah, that was launch day of the game.
Yep, and like on the news was like, oh my god, there's this big ball over Mars. We have no idea what the hell it is. And then it goes into the whole spiel, lifetime tripled, all that stuff, whatever. So 16 centuries of Dark Age, 1,600 years of mankind, of risen and warlords and death and darkness and crap. Like, the world's been in quite a bit of a turmoil for quite a bit of time before the Awoken managed to make it back. Because again, remember, the Awoken came from that time frame, and presumably Petra could have actually remembered when 2000 and whatever was.
She could have, although it's worth pointing out there are Awoken at this point that were born in the Reef, as well as born in the city or on Earth.
And she was being trained as a Techien for a little while, so she could be a fairly young Awoken.
Yeah, I get the inclination that Petra was born in the reef. I think she is
Okay.
young. She is not from the distributary originally. I think she was born in the soul system.
Okay. And I guess that brings up another quick question. Do we know if Awoken that were born outside of the distributary are still immortal?
Well, no, because leaving the distributary, none of them are immortal.
Right. Oh, like they're still but they don't like. It's not like a rapid age thing, right? Like they spent 12.1 billion years in there, and then they come out and they're like, oh my god, now your body is 12.1 billion years old. Boop, now you're dust.
No.
They just age at a normal pace now.
Yeah, and that's a little wonky as well, to be honest.
Because like Tyra Karn, like
Right. Tyra's been around a
she,
while.
but she even looks like an older.
Right, she looks
Uh,
elderly.
right.
But you think about Uldren and Mara, prior to Mara remaking herself and Uldren becoming Crow, they still look, fairly young,
Right.
20s or 30s perhaps. And they lived through the distributary, which they were immortal for, but then a good number of years outside of it when they first entered the soul system. So it might just be that they age now, but it's slowly, perhaps. I'm not
Yep, right.
I'm not sure. We never get exact answers on that.
I know. I'm
But
trying to break down anatomy of an Awoken in
yeah,
a video
it's
game,
not
and it's
happening.
like just fucking because video game it. It's fine. Like, I get it. I know that's the ultimate answer there. But no, I just thought it was neat that even Petra has like this kind of idea of like how long the Dark Age lasted, and
Yeah.
this, to my recollection, this is the only reference of it.
The only one that comes to mind for me, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I just thought it was a neat point to
it is.
see there.
It's an interesting
So yeah.
little blip.
So Petra refuses the mocking Titan of the Titans, Zavala, and his quote unquote offer.
Yeah. She's not impressed. But what this card does go to show is that the Awoken are in real dire straits at this point. For Cade, as well intentioned as he was, to go out of his way to convince Zavala to come meet Petra to offer safe harbor for her people must mean that the reef is really, really bad right now.
Yeah.
Even though she refused him. So we know the reef is in a bad spot. And we know that Uldren previously was on Mars trying to get off of Mars with the intention of finding his sister, because he was driven by this manic idea that she has to be out there still. She has to be out there. And so we're going to return to what has been happening to Uldren, and we're going to stick with him for quite a while here. Probably the remainder of this episode. But just keep in the back of your head kind of the current climate in the reef. Like, people are desperate and desolate, and the Awoken Kingdom doesn't really exist anymore, or Queendom, I suppose, doesn't really exist anymore in the way it did. So with all that in mind, we're going to focus back in on Uldren. We're going to start with a D1 Grimoire card entitled Ghost Fragment The Reef 4. And it goes like this. He let his captors drag him through the dirt. His arms ached, 2 hands wrapped around each bicep like iron bands. He slumped, and the toes of his scuffed boots bumped over the stones and left trails in the dust. He kept his eyes low, a ragged and stained cloak hanging over his face. It was not a position to which he was accustomed. They debased him, they abused him, he bit the inside of his cheek until the blood filled his mouth. He struggled not to resist. They needed to believe he was broken, that he wasn't a threat. It was the only way they would bring him before their Kell. He'd spent weeks weaving the illusion that led the fallen to him. He'd left bits of his trail where they couldn't help but find them. He'd skulked from planet to planet, Mars, and then Venus, and then Mercury, and then back again, following rumors and whispers. He'd hid from the Guardians, from his own people. He'd let everything they had built fall apart, while those still loyal to him searched every inch of this forsaken system. Now it was time to stop searching and start building. He would need soldiers who answered to him and no one else, bodies to shape with will and magic and tech to his needs. These would serve. He thought they would take him to a catch, but they were deep underground, not near the Cosmodrome, but it didn't matter. He'd never been particularly concerned with the geography of this blasted world. It was not his home. So he bent his head low and listened to the guttural string of hisses and clicks issued from the maw of a would-be king in yellow, a broken ruler of a broken house, and the last of his kind. They were more alike than he cared to admit. When the creature's anger had burnt itself out, he raised his head to look at it. He did not need to speak. One kell rises, and another bends its knee, and the prince felt the little hum of starlight ripple through him, the one that let him know she would be pleased with what he had done. And that's the end of that lore card. But before we do any discussion on it, I want to actually roll right into the next one because it's just a literal continuation despite being written many years later.
I was going to say, even looking at the entry for the next one, like it just starts right where that one ends.
Yeah, it's actually really cool to think that the original card that I just read came from the Age of Triumph, which was the last kind of 6 months of Destiny 1. And this next card, which is Kings, from the book The Forsaken Prince, came out in Forsaken, which was, I think, 3 years later.
Year 2? Yeah, at least 3 years later, because that was year 2
of Destiny 2.
Destiny 2, yeah.
So, but the King's card goes like this. When at last they drag him before the Kell, he has already been transformed by weeks of abuse, weeks of beatings and forced runs and animal pen conditions, into a happy man. The mighty Kell of Kings tells him clearly, but not concisely, what it thinks of him. Prince Uldren of a ruined house, lesser of 2 siblings, bested by Skolas, blinded by Varix less than Dreg, squanderer of fleets, last of the Awoken nobility, last of his kind. When Uldren looks up at him, he doesn't even need to speak the truth. The Kell of Kings has named Uldren, and in doing so, has named itself, the broken ruler of a broken house, the last Kell. You can do what I cannot, the Kell tells Uldren. You broken, beaten thing, you have no pride, so you will lose nothing when you give the word that must be given. It is twilight for the fallen, and we must lay our banners down. And to the groaned and growled protests of its court, the Kell of Kings kneels to Uldren. I bow to thee, it says, for in thy downfall and disgrace thou bearest the weakness we cannot. Thou shalt tell the Elixni to tear off their banners. Thou shalt tell them that we must all surrender to each other. We must give up our rivalries, or we will not survive. Willst thou do this for one dying people, prince of another? He will do it. He will gain soldiers and ships and resources to begin the search. He found them. He himself, by risking everything and surviving, as he always does. He feels her in his heart. She's still out there. She needs him more than ever. In the pit of his suffering, her voice came clearly to him, like the way she once appeared to him while he was being beaten to a pulp in a zero-G brawl. She is out there waiting for him, and everything will be all right. He will be there for her. It will be all right. And that's the end of that card.
What a God, broken man. But I mean, he got exactly what he needed. He got he's going to be able to. So man, I don't have a lot of questions to this. The main question is, do we know who this Kel is?
It's not a Kel that we have met before in game. I don't know if he's named, to be honest, although he does come up in a number of the cards that we're going to read tonight. So we may, his name may come up there. But in short, although Uldren is, clearly not thinking straight, he's still very intelligent when it comes to strategy and when it comes to deception.
Absolutely.
Looking at the previous Grimoire card, he has intentionally been leading this trail to and leaving rumors and little whispers here and there to make these fallen want to hunt him and then end up being able to find him, all with the intention of him taking on the role of their commander.
This is very much like him again, the truest, deepest form of Uldren Sov, the man who measures himself by what he can survive.
Mm-hmm. No, he's still doing it, and in this case, he has this such an innate knowledge and cleverness to know the Elixni enough, to know their culture enough within the soul system, to know that like the Elixni could never surrender to one another. It's just not in them to do it, whether they think it's best for their people or not. They would never surrender to one another. But they would perhaps surrender to someone that is outside of their people and use that outside person as the point to draw all the houses together. And that's what the Kel of Kings is proposing to Uldren. He's saying, like, I cannot, my pride and the pride of my house will not allow me to merge my house with another. But if we put you above all other Kels, that will be a way for us to all consolidate.
Because that's an interesting point to make there, is that a Kel is not the Kel position is taken. Like another Elixni comes in and declares themselves like
right.
They basically beat the other person and say, I am the new Kel, I'm the new leader of this house. And there's so many different houses. I'm assuming this is Kel of Kings, House of Kings.
Yeah, the House of Kings. Yep.
Yep. And he even says like, we can't survive like this. We as it's the twilight for the fallen, and we really need to just combine our resources and consolidate and be unified under one banner. And he's like, he sees Prince Uldren as in the same position, but with a hell of a lot more tenacity, I guess, survivability. I don't know. Like it kind of blows my mind. Like what does this Kel of Kings see in Uldren that would even make him think I can bow to this person. I can kneel to this broken, beaten thing and call it my Kel.
Well, and I think that's the distinction. He's not calling Uldren his Kel. And he doesn't believe my takeaway from it is he doesn't believe that Uldren is the right person for this because he's so powerful or because he's this bastion of leadership. quite the opposite. He believes Uldren is the right person for this because he knows what it's like to be a part of a race that is facing extinction, and he has no shame and he has no pride, and because of that, he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep the people that are under him alive so long as they align with what he wants.
I like that. I really like that train of thought. Man, this is why you get the better theories.
I mean, from the Kell of Kings point of view, he's like, well, we can keep doing what the Elixir have always done, have little fights with each other, never have a singular leader, and eventually just peter out of existence, or we can at least continue to exist consolidated under one house. And this guy may not be the best leader, but at least we'll be alive.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the point of view that they're approaching it from.
I like it.
And on Uldren's side of things, this is exactly what he wanted. It gives him an army, it gives him control, and access to tech and ships and all of these things. And he believes somewhere deep down that, like, this is the path to find Mara. This is what I'm supposed to do to find her, and that she would be proud of the decisions he's making.
Yeah.
So with that mindset, with Uldren's mindset of like that, this is what Mara would want. We're gonna go into the next chapter of this book, The Forsaken Prince, which is entitled Fanatic Part 1. And it goes like this. She's been silent too long. The whole solar system groans with the bruises of war. Uldren lives in constant suffering, a numb, scowling pain that drives him to ether and worse distractions. He's never felt the light this strong. He's never known pain so deep. How many centuries with his sister? And how quickly he's disintegrated without her. Why won't she speak to him? The reef burns around him. Shattered asteroids and cracked habitats spill bright flakes of debris. There's nothing quite so stark and brilliant as sunlight wreckage in vacuum. The reef is huge, huge but dense, too. Its structures and people gather in tight clusters against the vastness of space. Oryx and the Red Legion ripped great holes in the reef. Oh, if only Uldren had told Petra that Torog's broken legion was a Trojan horse. But Uldren has nothing to give to a regent who surrenders her people to the traveler. She's always wanted Mara's approval, little Petra. Always wanted to integrate herself. But she's never understood what Mara respects. She's never been willing to take the hard road to Mara's trust. That's why Mara doesn't speak to Petra. But Mara's not been speaking to Uldren either. He kicks off the wretched hull of the corvette. He and the Kings have been raiding the asteroid belt, knocking out shipping headed for Earth, trying to further destabilize the reef. Uldren has killed his own subjects, and at first that left him wretched with guilt, curled up in the hard cell where he sleeps. But didn't Mara lead thousands of her subjects to their deaths for a still enigmatic greater good? How is this any different? She's always intended her people for the altar. The Awoken are pawns in her design. It's up to Uldren to set that design back on track. Mara, he shouts out into the starlight. He has come too far to beg now. He has done too much. He demands her answer. I'm not angry. I forgive you for sacrificing yourself to them. But you must answer me now. Am I on the right path? Am I nearer to finding you? He has the House of Kings as allies. His raids on the reef have forced Petra to pull back, consolidate. focus on protecting her citizens instead of collaborating with the Guardians. But is he any closer to Mara? Can he trust himself to do this? He always wanted to surprise Mara, to make her recalculate her plans. But it would help him so much to know that she foresaw a little of this, to be certain that he's headed the right way. Mara, he cries, blinking against the persistent soreness in his eye. Sister, have you forsaken me? And something answers him. And that's the end of that card.
So this is post Red War. This is post Destiny 2 base campaign, which unfortunately is no longer available in game. But long story short, Gaul came to the system. We got our asses kicked. Then we came back from it, kicked his ass.
Yep. The takeaway for that in relation to the reef is that to get to us, he had to go through the reef first. And while he didn't do the same fire and brimstone he did to the last city, he certainly didn't leave the reef unscathed either.
Nope. So Uldren's throughout this whole thing, Uldren is very. I feel like he's very conflicted here. Like he wants to know that, like, and it's more stated kind of towards the end of it that he always wanted to surprise Mara to make her recalculate her plans. But it's almost like he still wants to know that there's just a little bit of like, oh yeah, I totally knew you were going to do that, to know that he's on that right path, and he's very lost, very very lost. So yeah, and still, and it brings it up here at the end too. Mara, he cries, blinking against the persistent soreness in his right eye. So that little twinge of
still there,
thing that's poking him is still there. It's been with him this whole time. So yeah.
And I think it's worth pointing out here that Uldren has been doing terrible things against his own people. He has been raiding supply ships, like trading ships that are going from the reef to Earth. He's been actively killing Awoken citizens that are in the reef, forcing Petra to kind of like consolidate and wall off her people and the reef from interacting with anything else out of fear of this unknown retaliation. This is kind of their in-game explanation at this point for why the Awoken pretty much did not make contact with the tower after the Taken War until Forsaken. Like that entire period of time in the Destiny universe, the Awoken never really came into play again.
Nope. I mean, obviously the part of it is like they're very much a broken people. Like,
oh yeah.
But even here to see Uldren like completely forsaken his own people, like.
Yeah, and he saw Petra making any attempt to parlay with the city as like her being traitorous almost.
Like blasphemous. Like I think it's even beyond like traitor. I bring it back to that cult idea. Like if she joins in with the traveler wannabe things, that she's blaspheming her own people.
Yeah. So he is seeing this as much a punishment as anything else, and he justifies it to himself as well, Mara was always willing to make sacrifices. She always saw her people as just a chess piece to be used as needed. So why should I feel bad about doing the same? Now, speaking, outside of Uldren's little headcanon that's happening here, I think that is observedly false.
Well, and mainly because Uldren never knew the full plan. Like all he saw was at the surface level. Oh, she just flew her whole people into this thing, everyone got killed, and that's it. Like that was, like what the hell kind of existence is that in Uldren's mind?
Yeah, and this is still the the psyche of a madman or a man going mad, trying to justify these terrible actions he's been doing. And why, it's not really his fault, or it's not really so bad that he's, doing these things, because it's all in pursuit of this greater good.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and it's been like a slow spiral, right? Like ever since his venture to the Black Garden, his mind has just been ravished, like shredded. I don't like even when we talk to him, the few times that we do interact with him in D1, he very much is kind of like he doesn't seem like he's all there anymore. And so for him to kind of take this idea of like, oh yeah, whatever, it's it's I can just use these people the way Mara did.
Yeah.
It's this is a madman talking. This is a man using just insane ideas for justifications that shouldn't be that way.
Yep. So I say we're gonna get right into the next card here, which is Fanatic Part 2 of the same lore book. And it goes like this. Just a whisper, just a brush of reassurance, just a quiver. Uldren, my rescuer. He follows the voice. The violence of his thruster burns, bruises his body. Down from the tumbling corvette to the harnessed asteroid below, where scattered servitors and the wreckage of shanks mark the site of a losing battle, guardians ambushing a fallen party. His suits, chemoceptors, detect a trace of ether. He follows it in. And there it is, a fallen Archon, crumpled in the dust. Ether hisses through the entry and exit wounds, cauterized by brutal solar flames, the mark of the golden gun. Uldren hisses in disgust as he traces Guardian footprints in the dust. They must have sprinted off together in a rush, no doubt to farm some other site where skiffs were coming down with mining parties. He triages the Archon's wounds. Mortal. The victim is shaking now, trembling under Uldren's hands. He wants so badly to do something, anything, to ease the poor soldier's passing. To have the power to say his sister, to have the power some say his sister had, to save just by proximity. Does he wish it? Does he wish to save this poor thing? He does. He does. His eyes burn with sympathetic tears as he works to bind the Archon's wounds. His hands are quick and gentle, and he weeps with the strength of his hatred for the guardians that did this. As tears stain the Archon's wounds, the ether roiling through Uldren's fingers slowly grows heavier, darker, more noxious. He does not notice. Finally, he leans back to smear his knuckles across his eyes, sore, they're always so sore. Under the unmarked helmet, 4 dead eyes open in wonder. The Archon croaks a word, a broken leftover of a dying hallucination, calling out to whoever he wanted to see welcoming him into the afterlife. Dad? And that's the end of that card.
I want to say pretty self-explanatory what's happening here, but we'll go ahead and break it down.
I think there's a few things we can point at that maybe require a little more.
Sure. I guess very self-explanatory to somebody who has been reading the lore pretty habitually.
Yeah. So if it's not apparent from the title of this card being Fanatic, the Archon in question here is Fikrul, who was the first of the Scorn, and this is him being reborn as a Scorn, essentially.
There's kind of like two parts to it, right? Like the first part is does he wish it? Does he wish to save this poor thing? He
Yeah.
does. He does. That's straight up Ahamkara.
Mm-hmm.
That's Riven is now hearing his wish, and at this point in time, a taken Riven is now hearing his wish and is starting to grant it in the way that a taken Ahamkara would, and the ether that's being poured. So presumably, this Archon is dead. It died.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is not alive. There's nothing left of it. But in Uldren's mind, or through the tears from him rubbing his eyes raw, because they're so sore. They're always so sore. He thinks he sees some sort of life in this thing, and wishes for it to come back. And so in monkey paw magic way, the darkness, the takenness of Riven mixes with the ether and breathes this dead fallen back to life, in the form of the first Scorn, Fikrul the Fanatic.
Yeah. And to paint a little bit of a picture here, how I see this particular scene play out in the theater of my mind. From Forsaken cutscenes, we know that Uldren has like this swirling black mist in his eyes. And what I see when I read this is Uldren, kneeling before, maybe kind of cradling the body of this Archon, trying to bind some of the wounds, weeping. And to me, maybe it's just flavor, for my personal interpretation of the scene, but I see him crying like black tears, literal tears
Absolutely.
of darkness. And
absolutely,
these tears fall onto the wounds of this Archon, where ether is leaking out, and that is the moment where they mix, and you get the first dark ether, which is what the Scorn run on, essentially.
Because ether, and we've theorized this before in some of our very older episodes, ether is essential to a fallen. Like,
Yes,
they almost
absolutely
have to breathe it like an atmosphere. We think that it's part of their original atmosphere, and that's from their original planet, and that's what's required for them to breathe, for them to exist, almost like a fish out of water type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this to be dark ether, like, that's kind of like what a Scorn needs to be. A Scorn a Scorn is a dead fallen, just as much as we Guardians are dead beings that has been brought back to life by the power of this dark ether, which is essentially, can we call it dark res?
I mean,
can we call it darkness res?
It's hard to say, because in some cases, like that of Fikrul, they retain their mind to a point.
So here, and okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly where I was going with this. For the light, you lose your memory. The darkness is all about retaining it. And that's why I question if it is a dark res.
The thing that makes me pause as to exactly how this is working is when we look at normal Scorn, Scorn that are just of dregs or vandals or whatnot.
Sure.
Especially as how they're described in like the Glycon story, they're not they're mindless. They have no individual minds. They all respond to like some shared will where they receive orders from whoever it is that's directing this shared consciousness.
Almost like they're operating on the last order they were given.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I'm still going to call it dark res because I like that idea.
I mean,
this is the darkness power of the red. But then, like, would the darkness need a reason for rezzing. Like that's like the whole point of the light is to create complexity. And I don't want to say the light is kind of like the life giver, the bringing it back, but even the witness talks about life, the light as being like never-ending suffering and death. Like all the light brings is death because that's what's required of it. Like, so it's interesting to me to see this from like the other side of it. Like, what if there is a dark res? What if darkness powers as a res is a thing?
Well, and the other thing, we have not seen this phenomenon happen with darkness in any other species or prior to this. This may not be purely a darkness res. This may be something to do with the nature of. I see it either being one of two ways. This is something to do with the nature of Awoken being a combination of light and dark inherently. And so maybe even though it's primarily dark, whatever it is that Uldren is crying, whatever his tears are made out of, maybe has a touch of both.
Oh, that's so good. Oh man, that's so good. I like that.
And the other piece of this that we can't ignore is the fact that this is a granted wish.
It's a wish, right? Like that's like and wish magic is neither light nor dark. It's just kind of there.
So it could be that normally this wouldn't affect ether in this way, or maybe it is that pure dark wouldn't affect ether in this way, but because a wish was made, it tipped those scales, the scales of fate, to be like, nah, there's a little mix going on, or whatever the specific combination that was needed to have this result was because of that wish.
I like it. I freaking love it. I love it. I freaking love it. That's so good. That is so good.
So, but for anyone that maybe has recently started the game, with even maybe with Witch Queen or something, you came back to it and wondered why in the latest season, the Nightmare of Uldren and Crow are discussing why the Scorn call him father. This is why, because
This is the exact reason.
He is literally the progenitor of all Scorn. Is Uldren.
Boom. So yeah, so Fickrell is reborn. I don't want to say born because
right, he was still Fickrell before, but he's now been reborn as a Scorn instead of an Elixni. And I find it interesting that Uldren was drawn to this body, was drawn to this fallen that he just so happened to turn into the first Scorn by the whispers of Mara, by this voice in the dark that he was following that sounded like his sister. So perhaps even him meeting Fickrell was because of Riven, because it was a step in this grander wish that she was needing to fulfill.
Yeah.
But so we're gonna now go on to the next page within this book, which is called The Severance. And it's continuing our story of Uldren, and it goes like this. He has come to the realization that it no longer matters if he doesn't know what to do or if he's doing the right thing. What matters is that he wants. If he wants to find Mara and save her, if he wants to do the right thing fiercely enough, if his intentions are good and powerful, he will find a way. He just has to believe in himself. No more paralyzing analysis, no more painful regrets. He has to go forward without doubt. The Awoken are a beautiful creation, and he must keep them safe. And secrets are safe. Sister, he asks the wall of his quarters, Lately, in between bouts of euphoria, he's been sleeping too long. Sometimes it takes him an hour to get to his feet, another hour to make himself don his armor. Wasn't living easy once? Couldn't he just do things just by wanting them? The spark has gone out of him. The spark of the possibility of Mara's trust. And he needs it back. Come home, the wall tells him. It's time to come home and take your crown. He leaps to his feet. Yes, he wants something again. Wants more than to lie here numbly. He wants to show his face to his awoken people. He wants the fanfare played at his welcome. He wants to make a speech accepting the kingship. He wants to terrify and stir his people with the ferocity of his need to save Mara. The Awoken have survived so much. He will tell them that they do not need to survive anymore, that the end is coming, the end of the long plan. He goes to the Ketch's bridge. What news from the reef? He barks. A shank casts the sound into his ears. Petra's voice. Petra, who dares to try to replace what does not need replacing. Cade, the targets are in the crater now. My fire teams are in blocking position. Whoever you've got, call them in. Guardians. Petra and the Guardians working together. Did Mara ever want this? Uldren thinks not. Is it possible that he's too late? That the Awoken are no longer awoken? Lulled by the absence of his sister into the traveler's trance? Set a course for the Vestian outpost, he snaps, rubbing at his eyes. Prepare skiffs for a camouflaged insertion. We'll put an end to What are you doing? A captain of the kings growls in his ear. The House of Kings is very satisfied with the state of the Awoken Demesne. I have to look that word up. And if we interfere, we will certainly attract guardians. Insubordination. She would have never tolerated this. Ah, Uldren says, careful to keep his voice light. Yes, of course. The itch in his eyes resume, and he discovers that he has a new desire, a new thing he fiercely wants. And that's the end of that lore card.
Well, so first things first, you got a word to Google.
I mean, it means like home or abode or whatever, but like I can't say it. Demesne?
Demesne? Demesne?
Whatever. It means possession of property, or land attached to an owner.
Okay.
So yeah, like it's a fancy word for, the Awoken. The Awoken.
Bungie and them dang old fancy words and shits.
The Awoken lands. Yeah. So
well, it's gotta be a fancy word because it's regal. Right? Like
right.
that's the right.
But so in short, we're seeing some really major mood swings here with Uldren.
Oh my god. Like, well, and I think it started like I forgot to ask you about this before. A couple of cards back, it talked about him using ether. Is he like is he smoking ether?
Oh yeah. That is absolutely the implication. Like he is getting high? Question mark?
Yeah.
Off ether. I don't know what effect ether has on people, but yeah.
I'm assuming hallucinogenic effects.
So he is looking for escapes, essentially. At that point in time. And even now we're seeing kind of like manic depressive episodes.
Oh yeah.
Where he can't get out of bed. It takes him an hour just to put his clothes on. Wasn't living easy once, that kind of thing. And then he'll suddenly have a thought, and that thought will fill him full of energy, and he leaps to his feet. And his thought this time around was like, I'm going to go back to the Awoken people, and I will be their king, and I will everyone will love me that I'm there, and I will herald in this great search for Mara, and we'll bring her back. And he's so excited about this, and he runs to the bridge of the ketch and says, what news do we have from the reef? And he's greeted with Petra allying with the Guardians to corner and either imprison or eliminate what are presumed to be a group of Elixni, perhaps fallen from a different house or something. And he sees this as the ultimate betrayal. Mara never trusted the Traveler. She wouldn't want us working with Guardians. This is an affront to everything she stood for. And he's telling them, like, prepare the skiffs. We're gonna go to the outpost. I'm gonna put an end to Petra. And he's getting some talk back from the captain of the ketch, who's like, no, everything's good. Like, this is working out really well for the fallen houses right now.
Like maybe don't do this.
Yeah, like we're doing really well. Let's not start a little mini war by trying to invade what's left of the Awoken Reef. And
I love Uldren's instantaneous answer. Yeah. Insubordination. You little shit. I should burn you. And then instantly, like, no, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the swing of this mood is
for anyone that has seen it, and I know it's gotten much more popular as of late. Uldren is really, really channeling some Homelander for me right now from the TV show The Boys.
Oh my gosh.
Like, that is the vibe I'm getting from him right now.
I like it. I really like it. But he really is. He's all over the place. And throughout the whole thing, he wants. Like, he's scratching at his eye again, and a new desire, a new fierce thing. Like, Riven is in full control of him now.
That's the whole first paragraph, is him saying, like, no, if I just want something hard enough, it'll happen.
Yep.
And he's attributing that as, like, it's because if I want something hard enough, I'm believing that I can do it, and I'm having confidence in myself, and so I make it happen. Where really, it's like he's just a buffet for Riven right now.
Yeah. Oh my god, yes. Like, it's just nonstop feeding time. So yeah.
But he has a new want at the end of this card, and I think we can probably guess as to what that is. So with that in mind, we're going to go to the next card, which is entitled Fickrel. And it goes like this. The Archon he saved is named Fickrel, and he worships Uldren like a father and a god. Uldren understands, now, what brought them together. They each see a future for their broken people, a future that cannot be obtained by looking back. Fickrel tells Uldren how the Fallen have been crippled by their dependency on machines, how they've clung to tradition instead of hurling themselves into the abyss, seeking rebirth through extinction into a new species. I feel the same, Uldren tells Fickrel, whittling a tiny model galliot from an ingot of steel. We say we exist on the thin line between dark and light, Fickrel, but my people have always been easily led astray. What future do you see for the Awoken? Fickrel asks him. What future? After he finds and saves Mara, he realizes he doesn't care. He spent so many centuries stalking the perimeter of Awoken society, fighting off challengers, spying, sneaking, doing Mara's dirty work. Nothing has value except in its relation to Mara's plots. Not even himself. They can die for all I care, he says with a viciousness he never expected of himself. Didn't he want to save his people? No. Mara was willing to destroy them for her purposes. The Awoken have no value at all except in service of her design. If some part of them survives, it will be the worthy part, he says. Does he wish for Awoken extinction? Is that what he truly wishes? We have work to do, he tells Fickrell. The House of Kings has become inconvenient to my plans. I wish to. He wags his knife. Divest. Fickrell looks up sharply from his own knives. Dark ether seethes like mists around his face. It is time? We show them the future now? And that's where that lore card ends.
Oh my god. He is all over the place. First off, who the hell is whittling out of an ingot of steel?
Apparently, Uldren.
I want this fucking ability. Like, whatever. But he is all over the place. He is just. There is no direction in him anymore.
Mm-mm.
It's, didn't he want to save his people? No. Marta was willing to throw them all away. That's what he wants. Like, fuck them. They're, who cares? If they survive, it's going to be the parts that matter. And outside of that, who cares? And then, like, does he really wish for this? Is that what he truly wishes? Like,
now, I do think it's important. He never answers that question.
Yep.
Does he wish for Awoken extinction? Is that what he really wishes? That's 100% Riven looking to feed on something.
Yep.
And I think if he had actually answered yes, there may not be any Awoken in the game.
I think you're right. I think the Awoken would have been wiped out as of Forsaken. Like, I think you're right because he doesn't directly answer Riven. Like, and that's the thing with like Ahamkara wishes, right? Like, they're not like genie wishes, right? Like, you don't like rub an Ahamkara bone and a thing pops out and you're just like, I wish for $1 million. It's like you have to have that desire, and it's the desire itself that it feeds off of, and that's what it's granting those wishes off of. And it's not necessarily granting wishes. It's very much of a shifting magic bullshit is what it like. Nobody really has an explanation for it. But it's there's not a direct, cause and effect thing because it's magic. It's wishing magic. Like, it's, yeah, for some Ahamkara reason. But yeah, but the fact that he doesn't truly acknowledge that question, like, it, I think you're right. I think if he had acknowledged that, we might have seen the end of the Awoken.
I'd like to believe that the reason why he decides to deflect and think about something else, the House of Kings becoming an inconvenience, is because there's still some part of him in there that recognizes that thought as like truly not his thought, as something that he would not want. And
I was gonna say
he's not himself enough to reject it, so he deflects onto something else.
I was gonna say, do you think that he still thinks of himself as the hero, or does he? Do you think at this point in time he still thinks of his friend Julian? Like,
no, I mean he said it himself. He doesn't care anymore.
That's true.
Like, he doesn't care if the Awoken live or die. He certainly doesn't care what they think of him.
Man.
So I think like he has lost that part of his persona at this point. He doesn't care if he's the hero for the Awoken people. He just wants to be the hero for Mara.
See, kids, this is what Dark Ether does to you. Do not do in any drugs are bad, okay? Okay.
So, but he gives a very clear indication to Fickrell about like, yeah, these The House of Kings has served its purpose. And it's interesting. Fickrell has this idea, maybe one that is placed there because of his tie to darkness now. We don't really know what Fickrell was like before this. Um, but Fickrell has this philosophy of the Elixni should just go extinct so that they can become something else. And I feel like it referring to Scorn in this instance.
Right. Well, and I was going to ask that, like, and at the very last line, do we show them the future now? Is it time? Like, is there some sort of like secret plot or plan between Fickrell and Uldren that Uldren has straight up said, "Hey, we're just going to kill them all and bring them all back the way I brought you back with, you know, being being the Scorn rather than Fallen."
I think that's the implication, is that like they've talked it out, their philosophies align. Aldrin's
Yeah.
like the Awoken need to be eradicated, or eradicated to the point that whatever survives evolved into something else. And Fickrell has the same idea for the Elixni, for the Fallen, and they're Aldrin is now saying like, hey, you know what? House of Kings not working out. Let's evolve them into something greater. And I think that's exactly what it is. Is Fickrell is going, all right, this is the test run, essentially.
Drugs are bad, okay? Okay.
So we get
That's all I'm going to say on that.
We get a little piece of what this test run looks like in the next lore card, which is entitled Docking. And it goes like this. Honorless at the end, gasps the former Kell of Kings. Faithless and false, your sister's will kept us from the great machine Uldren Sov. She challenged the wolves by right of noble lineage, but you skulk in shadows and filth. You hide behind your bruises like a dreg. Funny you should mention that, Uldren sneers. He knows he's sneering, but this worthless thing deserves it. What did the Kell of Kings ever want? To go backward. More servitors, more machines, more of the past. Uldren sees now that extinction is the only beginning, that the bones of what you become can act more powerfully than the flesh of what you leave behind. Fickrell. Shattered servitors and dead fallen loom in ether-frosted mounds behind Fickrell. He comes forward silently, hulking, horrific, his headdress gritting out the firelights into blocks of shadow and smoke. He carries 2 shock daggers. We are the last of our kinds, Uldren tells the Kell. My sister is gone. So is the idea of your great machine. The difference between us, he leans in to hiss. My sister's coming back. And in 4 swift cuts, the Archon of the Scorned Barons docks the Kell of Kings. Uldren tears the House of Kings sigil hanging from the new Dreg's belt and holds it high for all to see. The kings are dead. Long live the king, comes Fickrell's reverent growl. And that's the end of that card.
So for those of you that don't know what docking is, please don't Google it. Dude, you're gonna get a lot of really. Just don't do it. In this sense, docking is the act of when you look at Fallen and you look at Vandals and Dregs and Marauders and Captains, you'll notice that Dregs are the only one of them that have 2 arms. All the rest of them have 4 arms. And docking is the act of removing 2 of those arms. And they do this to keep the dregs, to keep like the lower fallen in line. and it's like it's almost like a punishment. It's like it's a fallen punishment, because later on, and this is way later. This is when we finally start meeting up with Mithrax. He talks about how docking is like, it's a fallen thing. It's not an elixny thing. It is purely a fallen thing. Even though fallen are elixny, they are like the fallen. I put that in quotation marks. Elixny. They are no longer like true elixny anymore. But they can grow them back. They are very insectoid like that. That I guess it wouldn't be insectoid, would it, Myth? It'd be more like an earthworm.
Yeah, I mean, we could speculate all day as to the nature of the
Anatomy.
fallen, but say it's an
But
Awoken
yeah,
series,
that's the
so
whole thing. But that's the whole thing is like, he's cutting off his arms to be like, you are no longer anything to me. You're nothing but dreg. You're filth to me, is what Uldren's doing this for.
yeah, he's usurping command in a very symbolic and intentionally like brutal way. He's proclaiming himself the king of the fallen in some ways, or the king of the fallen under his command, at least.
I was gonna say, this is a very Kel way of doing it.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
I very much see this as Uldren seeing himself as like, well, that's how the Kells do it, and that's how I'm gonna claim my rightful throne of these fallen. I'm gonna do it the way the Kel does it, so they see me as a Kel. They see me as that brutal leader that, if you fuck with me, you're getting docked, like, and not like you're getting docked next week's pay. You're losing an arm or two.
So now that he has usurped the Kel of Kings and has truly taken power for all of these fallen that are under his command, he sets out to do what he was originally going to do before having to deal with insubordination, and that is find Petra. And we see a very brief interaction between them in the next card, which is just titled Petra.
And real quick, before you jump into that one, this one and the next card after it, Flayed. I want you to read both of those back to back.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's the same scene being played out in both of them, or at least I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is, from two different points of view.
Yeah. So we're gonna start with Petra, and then we'll go right into Flayed. And I'll note when one ends and the other begins. But so yeah, this is the Petra card. And it goes like this. After that, Uldren and Fickrell part ways for a time. Fickrell goes to his bloody work, reshaping fallen society the way a hammer reshapes a spider, and drawing certain useful elements to him. Uldren resumes his lonely search for Mara. He remembers a time, long ago, scouting with the crows, scouting with a young corsair who wanted nothing more than to be defined by her wrath. Perhaps Petra can be saved. He finds her in Thieves' Landing. What is she doing here? Mara never would have stooped to this, trading information with a criminal in the lowest places of... So few of us remain, he tells her, and in that moment, seeing the shame in her, he knows she is too far gone. She cannot be saved. That night, he weeps for Petra. Mara comes to him in the darkness. She has heard his sorrow. He looks up in wonder. His sister, sending her will and wisdom to watch over him. And he knows then that it will be all right. So that's the end of the Petra card. We're going to roll right into the next one, which is entitled Flayed. And it goes like this. Spider's lair. Petra in her element, light-footed, light of thought, She keeps herself open to the place. Heat of packed bodies and machinery, bite of ether in the air, money and the promise of money, and the things money can make people do. Knives, pistols, danger, like static charge. He's no good for you, she says, and he's no good for me. If you turn him over, I'll be happy. You like me happy, don't you, Spider? The spider grumbles. Very well. You will take him alive? He must have stores of ether, and no matter what Varric says, that ether is mine. He's agreed. She has what she came for, which is proof that the spider actually wants this capture to succeed. As regent, she can never tell when she succeeds. She's constantly reacting, making decisions that will only be clearly assessed by historians. Here, she is the wrath again. She feels brave. We'll deal with the ether once we have him. Thank you for the information. Petra slides the hood over her head and dismisses herself back into the crowd. Two dregs barter salvage with tokens like fingernail-sized knives. Slatted light falls through the thick clouds of adulterated ether to cut hard lines across the torn, bannerless fringes some of the fallen wear. A Cabal deserter, hunched against the wall in a baggy pressure sack, sells the location of Red Legion arms caches for loads of raw glimmer. Petra pauses for a moment on the threshold, looks back longingly at the chaos within, wishes that anything would happen to make her stay. And then she goes out into the shadows of the surface. Soon, as clear as the visions that sometimes come to her, she knows there's something moving quick and stealthy up ahead. She keeps her pace steady, checks her knife and pistol. So few of us remain, Petra Venge. The voice betrays a bearing, and she catches just a glimpse of structure against the background noise, the hood of a cloak, the arc of lips. Who's there? She challenges. It's a man. His movements are erratic, shrouded in arrhythmic noise that mimics the chaos of nature. He knows how to seem like an accidental thing, a tumbled heap, a brush of wind. Petra, if only we could go back to those days before. Uldren? She gasps. He's here. He has come to take the regency and execute his sister's will. She'll be free again to act and act without cruel deliberation and agonizing uncertainty, free to meet every challenge instead of making them for herself. No. This must be an illusion. It's too much of everything she wants. She searches with senses beyond sight for something capable of casting this into her mind. A scion flare? A hive wizard? She trusted you with all of this, all of us, and you gave it to the mercy of the light. She feels the intent to murder, and she knows it's meant for her. She draws and acquires the target faster than a sound can cross from mind to tongue, but her sight picture captures only darkness. 2 slow heartbeats. When no shot or knife comes, she begins to withdraw, and nothing follows her to her ship. And that's the end of that lower card.
So yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I think I personally like Petra's side of this. Like for her to hear the voice of Uldren and think, oh, thank God, I don't have to be Regent anymore. I can just be the Wrath again. I can be, because she definitely, I mean, throughout that whole second card, she very much feels comfortable as the Wrath, being the Regent, being a leader, and that's a hard thing for anyone. Like to become a leader when you didn't necessarily want it, but it was just thrust upon you. Like, guess what? You're the next highest in the chain of command. Go for it. And that was, and again, to try to draw some parallels to the real world, that was a lot of what both Allied and Axis forces saw throughout World War II was, you know, tank tank rolls through or a couple artillery shots roll through, your commander dies. Guess what? You're the next highest in the squad. Now you're in charge. And a lot of these, and again, I still think of Petra as very young. And in the same sense in World War II, these were very young guys that were I mean, 18, 19-year-old kids, 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids. They didn't have a clue what leadership meant, and so, but they knew they could fight, and they felt comfortable in the fight, and so that's I personally really sympathize with Petra's thoughts here, at least in the flayed card.
Yeah, and it's really it's almost it's kind of heartbreaking to see the difference between these two cards, to see in Petra's eyes going, "Oh, a glimmer of hope. Uldren is here and he's going to take control of he's going to, take control of the monarchy and lead these people again." And on Uldren's side of things, he's here because he sees Petra as nothing but this great traitorous, this person that has squandered leadership and sacrificed all the Awoken people were to the Guardians and to the city, and is so disappointed in her and decides she cannot be saved. To see kind of that stark difference in the same situation is really it tugs at you a little bit.
It's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
So, but despite him thinking she's beyond saving, and despite her clearly feeling like he was gonna try and kill her, he doesn't. He retreats.
Calculated retreat, I think, is what or no, what do they call that? Tactical advancement in the opposite direction.
I don't know that that's the case here, just because
I
he
think
had the tactical
retreat.
advantage.
He absolutely did. And it even talks about he moves about with the chaosness of nature as he's stalking her. I mean, this is the old school Uldren Sov versus remember the fight between Uldren and Shir Ido, when he was so hell bent on being with nature, and Sheer was able to just kick him out of his element by throwing him off his trail and stuff. This is the old school Uldren, the hunter, the sniper, the badass coming out. He absolutely had the tactical advantage here. He could have killed her if he wanted to, I
think so, but something stopped him.
Yeah.
So and we get a little glimpse into kind of where his thought process is going here in our next card, and this one is titled Free Part 1, and it goes like this. Admit it. Admit that you trapped my sister in the dreaming city. I did not, Ilyn says. She is not trapped, Uldren. She is dead. Uldren knows the truth now, and he wants things to be right. He wants it so fiercely that he knows nothing he does in pursuit of this can be wrong. Which lies, he spits, venomous. She is alive. Ilyn measures him in silence for a while, and then, we knew you would come, she tells him with a quiet, calm defiance. You are lost, Uldren. You knew I'd come, but you never searched for me. My sister would take your eyes for that. Your sister needs nothing from us now, Uldren. Not even you. The rage is almost enough to make him kill her, but he knows Mara wouldn't approve. She's with him now. She is substantial, if not corporeal, and she dances at the edge of his sight. You are so close, she whispers. Free me from this place, Uldren Sov. You've gone mad, Ilan says with repulsive empathy. I almost did too when I knew she'd gone. Why do you travel with that thing? What have you come to do? I've come to finish it, Uldren tells her. He even tries to smile because he is being honest. He's telling the truth. I've realized I was a fool to try to surprise her. We all exist through her design, Ilan. We all act by her consent. I'm going to save her because she needs me to save her. When she needs me to die, I will die. And when she has completed her great design for the Awoken will die too. It is the reward we so richly deserve, for we owe everything to Mara. It would be wrong for us to outlive our purpose. Trust me, life without her is worse than. He chokes on it. He can't describe it. At the edge of sight, Mara watches him with all the heartbroken concern and tender care he has always wanted from her. And that evening, he surrenders himself to the reef. And that's the end of that lore card.
He's so convinced at this point. Like he's there's no more. I don't want to say there's like his mind is gone. Like I feel like there's still a little bit of him here. Like obviously in like the Petra and the Flayed, like we still talk to him like that's the old school Uldren there, but his mind is gone.
And it's not just whispers anymore. It's not just hearing things. He is full on seeing her. He is full on.
He sees her. He sees Mara.
Hallucinating her, and she's talking to him. Which is just further feeding into this delusion of his is like, no, she's in the dreaming city. You guys locked it, not because there's bad things in there, but because you're trapping her in there.
And that line, "You're so close," she whispers. "Free me from this place, Uldren Sov." It's so telling as to who is saying that line.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the last word, Uldren Sov. Mara never would have said that to him.
No. She's used his first name before. She's called him Uldren, but she never in anything we've seen has she used a full name.
And it would never be that direct of a message.
Yeah.
Because she that's the thing with Mara. She hated the spoken word. It was she always said it was such a poor communication device or such a poor encryption device. Like it's so telling as who is whispering into him.
So, and say we are going to end tonight with the next lore card, which also is the end of the Forsaken Prince lore book. This lore card is Free Part 2. And it talks about the events of Uldren immediately after he surrendered himself to the reef. And it goes like this. They take him in with a full strike team, and one of the snipers, joining Uldren and his jailers at the extraction point, looks him full in the eyes, like he's asking a question. A tall man with a long rifle, narrow, intelligent eyes, handsome. Is he... Did Uldren want something from him once? Something important? Uldren absently rubs his eyes as he stares at him, and frowns, but he can't figure it out. They take him to a discreet landing dock on one of the lower levels of the Prison of Elders. When his containment unit hisses open the glow and the mist silhouette, an exo with glowing blue eyes and a woman with her weapon drawn. Petra herself. She stands there in silence. He knows she wants to kill him. He knows she wishes him to say, "You've done well." She speaks to you. Her words are curt and direct. What does she say? Uldren closes his eyes and lets Mara's voice wash through him. He is here in the heart of Petra's strength, in the prison she has so carefully tended as everything else falls apart. He is weak and he is bound. These are the strengths his sister never possessed, the endurance of humiliation, the survival of defeat. She says. He lifts his head to meet her gaze and watches her flinch. She holds him in her weapon's sights as she withdraws, step by careful step. The Exo steps forward to hood him with a black bag. She says, "Free me." And that's the end of the lore card.
So, a couple figures here to point out. The sniper's got to be Julian.
Absolutely.
Like, if that's not like, you can't convince me otherwise. So, it's very fitting that Julian is there at his capture. The Exo, that's Cade.
That is
Cade
Cade.
6. So yeah, we were trying to figure this out before we started tonight's episode of how did Cade come into play with the entire Forsaken expansion, and we had figured out that the Barons there are all part of the old Taniks crew, and Taniks, the whole joke, name 5 raid bosses, Taniks. Okay, yeah, no, that's on me. I failed. Yeah, no, that's because he's literally been like 5 or 6 different bosses throughout Destiny. But Taniks had killed Andal Brask, which was the original Hunter Vanguard before Cade, and that was the dare. Like that was part of the dares. Like, you know, Cade wanted revenge for Andal, and so he helped Petra hunt all these Barons down, all this stuff from Fickrell down. And so he's there too. He's there to bag Uldren and throw him in his cell and take him to his final holding place in the Prison of Elders. And then that question, you know, she speaks to you. What does she say? She says, "Free me." That's not Mara saying "free me." That is Riven, because Riven has been imprisoned inside the vault that is at the heart of the Dreaming City, and that scratching in his eye is Riven full on just directing him what to do now. Like, this is all just monkey paw wish magic Ahamkara bullshit, like whatever you want to call it. That's what's leading him now. That's what's keeping him moving forward in this plan. His wants are now just reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is where we're gonna leave things off for tonight, with Uldren seemingly surrendering himself to the Prison of Elders, with the hallucinations of his sister directing him to set her free. But we're expecting that the next episode will likely be the last of this particular series. So, and after that, we've got a couple ideas for what we may do. I know we do absolutely intend to cover whatever is revealed during the Destiny showcase later this month.
Only 14 more days. I'm so excited.
I know. And say work schedules may prevent us from being able to do any kind of like live reaction, but at the very least, we're going to try and aim for later that evening of the announcement. So keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, we're nearly at the end of our Awoken story here. So thank you for coming along with us on this particular ride. It ended up longer than I think any of us thought it would.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's been a ton of fun.
What, the Books of Sorrow is the only other longer, or
not longer.
This is engulfed. This is surpassed Books of Sorrow. Books of Sorrow was what, 8 parts?
Yeah.
Tonight we're recording part 10. of the Awoken, and we still
And
have
we
at
think
least
there'll be an 11.
hopefully one more part, and that's it. But yeah. So again, for everyone that's I was it Hootie McBooty that kept asking, where's this old Awoken story stuff? Well, this is it. This is us getting a complete story. You wanted a complete story. Well, here you got it.
Yeah.
And we still got one more part to go.
Didn't know what you were asking for at the time, but
Yeah.
we're glad you did. I'm glad we returned
Absolutely.
to this stuff.
I love that we're able to get a full reading in and get every single lore entry that is relevant to this all in a single place. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, and with that then, Myth, do we have any shout outs?
Yep. So we have had a few people, new people follow us on Twitter, which is awesome. Thank you very much for that. We haven't had anyone with particular comments or questions there, but that's perfectly okay. We did end up with a review on Apple Podcasts that somebody left that I want to give a shout out to. So they were very kind, left us a 5-star review. This is from Coxination7.
I love it. I love a good name that I have no idea how to pronounce, and Myth and I will screw it up, and I love it.
Yeah. So
Coxination. Okay.
They left a review saying, great chemistry between two crazies. These guys fill my workday with their expertise of lore from the Destiny games. Always witty to come up with theories and explanations that help explain what you need to know and how to understand it. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Oh, we are definitely crazies.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. That really does mean a lot. Like I love that people can that people are coming to this podcast as a, maybe they see something in game. Maybe they do open a lore entry on one of their guns or one of their armor, and it's like, well, who the hell is this that they're talking about? And they've gone and searched and looked, and they've stumbled across us, Myth and myself, and just went down all these rabbit holes with us. And so I love doing these deep dives. I really do. As long as this Awoken story has been, it's been fantastic the entire time, and I'm not only looking forward to the next part because it's quite possibly the last in the Awoken line, and we're also so close to that big reveal. But I look forward to this every week, of us being able to look into these entries and to get a little more insight onto events that, maybe they were explained in like a cutscene or something, or maybe they were like a line in a cutscene somewhere, like, oh yeah, you remember when Cade was there doing this, and then that's the only mention you have. Well, what was this? What was Cade? Who is Cade? What is, like, I like those questions to be answered.
Yeah, and
So, yeah.
I like having the opportunity, and we have tried our best to approach the lore stories here, especially from events that happened earlier in the game than the content that's currently available. Because I think it is important to recognize that there's a lot of new players, there's a lot of new lights that didn't experience that at all, and there's a lot of returning players that either didn't play during that time period, or it's been a number of years and you just forgot some details. So I like being able to try and provide a source for people in those situations to still enjoy some of those stories that they may not have been around to witness in person.
Absolutely.
I like being able to share that with people.
And I think that's a very interesting point there too, Myth. The idea that, video gaming today is so much more different than it was, hell, even 5 years ago, and it's constantly changing, and there's constantly the thought of archiving video games as almost like from the sense of a museum standpoint. And so I feel like we're doing that here. We're helping archive our experiences from these games that you can't access anymore. You can't go do the Red War anymore. You can't do this Forsaken storyline anymore. You can't go do the old Warmind stuff. You can't even go visit Io. Io doesn't even exist in the game. Like, there's so many things that in the games as a live service state that a lot of games are in now, that they are this not revolving door, but there's this constantly shifting, constantly changing, constantly moving the story forward. And yeah, it's easy to jump in from a playable standpoint to just, hey, I'm gonna hop on and play a few Crucible matches or play a Strike or whatever. But then every once in a while something will catch your eye and you're just, oh, what is that? What, something neat will happen, and to be able to have some type of archive like that to access information is, I think, super super crucial. So yeah.
Yeah. But so we're gonna wrap things up tonight. I'm just gonna leave with my kind of standard closer. Um, if you enjoyed what you heard from us and you want to leave a review somewhere, be it Apple or Audible or wherever you can do so, that would be really awesome. We totally appreciate that support. If you're interested in leaving a comment, or if you have a particular question about something and you want to get in touch with us, we do have a Twitter page. It's at Myths and Stories, Z instead of an S at the beginning of stories. You can drop that there. If you have a particularly heartwarming comment or a particularly thought-provoking question, you may hear yourself on a shout out in a future episode. So you can check us out there.
Yeah. Well, I guess I have my thank you. You know what? Thank you, Fickrel. If it hadn't been for you, we wouldn't have had Forsaken.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't that it? Yeah. All right. Well, Myth, anything else?
That's it.
All righty. Well, from all of us lore nerds to all of you guardians out there, we'll see you next week.